Hello and welcome to another dyspraxic episode of Lesbian Talk.
Dyspraxic all up in your grill, yo.
Yes. I was actually trying to think of I was trying to invent a word there, but I couldn't think of one, so I just used an actual word, and I apologize.
Yeah. And if it sounds like I'm under some kind of air raid, that's because literally, it's Memorial Day when we're recording this, so literally everyone in my neighborhood is using every kind of garden appliance known to man, so we were going to wait, but then another one started up, so we decided, fuck it, I'll try to edit it out and post.
Plus it's Memorial Day. You would have thought that they were doing like proper air raid stuff and killing people so you have more memorials next year. They're not even doing it right.
Fuck it, we're doing it live.
Well, before we begin, I'd just like to announce that I have discovered something rather funny from the Tumblr of the director of the Genderfilator. Apparently, in order to make that film, she had to talk with the Department of Homeland Security.
Why?
She does not say in the Tumblr thing, however, she says that the story is explained in the Genderfilator director's commentary, and I didn't even realize the film had one, so whenever we're finished here, I'm going to totally see if I can find this commentary. I want to hear this story.
I'm really interested about that now. Like, are there terrorists, trans people, or how did this...
Well, the characters were revolutionaries and or terrorists,
Oh, maybe it was that they were filming it, and somebody called them in, they thought it was like terrorist activities, but actually they were just filming.
It's possible, or maybe where they were filming was like near to one of their bases or something. There's lots of things that it was likely. It's probably really, really mundane, but it's a funny thing.
I guess. So, well, the word from last time, it wasn't really last week, but last time was Richard Nixon, because the Oxford American Dictionary apparently accepts proper nouns now.
Richard Nixon, who was a character in Days of Future Past.
Have you just seen Days of Future Past? Why, I wouldn't have known it.
No, I haven't just seen it. I saw it last week. I saw it the day before I gave my editing machine to these repair guys. When I watched it later, I watched it first showing in Derry, then immediately did the vlog, then immediately extracted, then set my vlog extracting, and then I had to take it to the repair place. So
the only thing I remember Richard Nixon from is that when he died, I was watching a show, and I was forced to change the channel so we could watch his funeral. It was like, nobody cares. That was forever.
I remember Richard Nixon. He was a character in that movie by Oliver Stone.
I do not remember him at all.
He was a character in a movie by Oliver Stone. He was a character in Nixon.
It doesn't mean that you remember him personally.
I never said I was. I was making a joke that he didn't actually exist and he was just a fictional character, actually.
Well...
You just ruined my joke.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. He's the main character in I think it's probably my favorite Oliver Stone film, that's Nixon.
Gee, shocked.
Dun dun dun. He was also in the Matt Smith episode of Doctor Who with the Silence. Not to be mistaken for the Silence, although they're related. Oh, Moffat.
Did the Doctor make like a whole bunch of witticisms that only an American would have known or gotten? Like, did he say, yeah, but you're probably not a cook. Get it, audience? I'm a Time Lord.
He wasn't too impressed with Nixon, although in that same season he came face to face with Hitler, so he was like, I suppose you're the lesser of two evils. Although, ironically, if you look at, like, Nixon set up the EPA, and he was the last old school Republican before the Reagan Revolution. And in some ways...
Even before Republicans became bad people? Oh, no.
And before the...
What did she say?
And before the Democrats started going more further right wing as well. It's really just amusing. Michael Moore at one point described Nixon as the last liberal that was in the White House.
Yeah.
Which is really amusingly disturbing.
I guess.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. But I kind of feel bad because I really don't... Like, usually when we're like, oh, this was the word, so I got nothing, really.
I can throw some information. He was one of the few American presidents to be born in California. Because
That's not really, like, interesting. Well, he was one of the few American presidents to be born in one of the 50 states.
Well, Reagan was the governor of California, but he wasn't actually born in California.
That's okay.
While Nixon was properly Californian. Plus, he's one of the few non-traditional Christian presidents that America's had. He was a Quaker.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
For people who don't know what Quakers are, they really love oatmeal. Pass it on. You should totally reference that fact on Twitter.
Yes.
Really, go ahead. We said it was all right.
Well, he seems to have been a fascinating person and mostly disagreeable.
Yeah, he always looks like he's like...
Well,
like, he's just like one harumph away from being a sitcom character, really.
One of the flubs, Teddy commented about how my body language looked like I was doing the Nixon I'm not a crook thing with the arms. Mm-hmm. And he made me do this on screen, but at the same time I had to point out to him that in fact Nixon's sort of arms movement with the V for victory signs was not actually connected with him saying I'm not a crook. Those were two different things that popular culture had mixed together. But I did it for him anyway.
Oh, you're a good Hagen.
There's me giving American political history to someone.
I pay attention. I mean, well, the thing is, and I know that we've talked about this before on Lesbian Talk, is the fact that really, they don't really cover the 20th century after World War II. It's like kind of like, you'll learn it in college.
Well, in my school days, we were taught about the Vietnam War and stuff quite a lot. It actually learning about the Vietnam War in secondary school is what made me into anti-war person.
Well, see, I went up to the time that I was a senior in high school, like the summer between a senior in high school and a freshman in college. I honestly believed that the Vietnam and Korean Wars happened right next to each other in the 70s because that's when the TV show MASH was made.
That's not as bad as the makers of Bone Kickers. Episode 5 of Bone Kickers seems to believe that the World War I and World War II were the same war, just with a 30-year halftime.
Well, some historians would make the claim that you could argue that claim.
You can argue that they were one was caused by the other, which is the case, but you couldn't say they were the same war with a halftime.
No, I mean, obviously that's just being snotty about it, but I could see somebody being snarky and saying that.
I mean, it's possible that Bone Kickers was trying to make some sort of snarky and intelligent comment, but based on the rest of their show, I doubt it.
Oh.
I've seen a historian make the claim that the War of 1812 and the American War of Independence were basically the same war with a halftime as well, but it's like, no, just one influenced the other.
Yeah, I mean, it could go either way. I mean, it's like English class. It's like the essay test. It's all in how you argue it.
That's true. So the World War I thing, and
I feel bad because, okay, so here's the thing. Here's the thing I was thinking about, because I was shelving, the other day at the store. And I was shelving military history, which I hate because there's never any room, and it badly needs to be zoned, but that's a story for another time. But, so, we have this whole entire row of World War II, like several bays of World War II. We have half a shelf of World War I. And I always feel kind of bad about it because, World War I, it was called the Great War, the war to end all wars. People really thought it was going to be the end of the world. And now we're just like, World War I, whatever. Is that the one in the movies? No, then no one cares.
Well, World War I, according to...
I feel bad. Don't worry, people who died in World War I love you. I remember. On this most hallowed Memorial Day.
According to an episode of QI I watched, the first person to use the term World War I actually used it before the end of the First World War.
Yeah, I know, but the thing is, it's more, its big moniker is the Great War. Like, if you say the Great War, everyone will say, oh, you mean World War I.
Yeah, that's what it was called, at the time.
Is that the same in Europe? Because I'm just speaking from an American point of view. Have you guys all forgotten, too?
About World War I?
Yeah, when we fetishize the Civil War, too. Oh, we fetishize the shit of that,
The UK tends to fetishize World War II because it was the last hurrah of the British Empire / Commonwealth in a battle. And I think the British have more of a reason to, because America continued to kick the shit out of people regularly afterwards, while Britain a little less regularly.
With World War II, it was like it wasn't like an economic thing. We could clearly point to the Third Reich and say, these people are horrible. They are terrible, they are evil, and they are trying to take over the world. We need to do something about this. So, I mean, I'm not the first person, obviously, to have said this, but, that was like our war, we were actually right.
Well, the British, they see it, the British have a tendency to forget they're the Russians, but the British see it basically them being alone in Europe taking on the Nazis. Yeah. So that's why it's a big thing of pride for the British culturally. World War I, our version of Memorial Day is Armistice Day on November 11th, and it's still that, and our symbol of the war dead and stuff is the poppies from World War I. Which grew.
Well, I remember that because I remember it from Downton Abbey. So
Britain remembers World War I probably more than America, possibly more than America does. But at the same time, World War I was not like World War II. It was not a cut and dried heroes and villains type thing. Even World War II is not 100% cut and dry because, there were people on both sides who were bad.
It's no good.
Yeah, but World War I, under no stretch of the imagination can the Allies or the Triple Entente call themselves heroes or the goodies.
It was just a kerfuffle, and that's actually too less of it. It was a clusterfuck. And I admit that, but I feel like, because the other day I also was shelving in magazines, we have 4 different magazines devoted to the Civil War, which the last time I checked ended quite a while ago.
And World War I just had a thought of it.
But that, like the Civil War, it did happen here, but it happened, it's so long ago now. World War I was at least, it's 100 years since 1914. I don't know, I'm just saying.
In World War I, now to think about it, it was the last of the old school European wars, where you had a bunch of European bastards, teaming up with other bastards against other bastards, in the way that they used to do in the Middle Ages. They would have alliances, they would kick the shit out of each other, and the regular people would suffer. Well, that possibly killed Europe's liking for that type of war. World War II was something different.
We're so done with that now. We're over that.
Possibly my phrasing was a bit unfortunate. I'm just trying to say it was like the older wars in European history in that way. Because the American Civil War has been described as the first modern war, and World War I could be described as the last pre-modern war, the last medieval war.
I guess.
I'm sure there's a term for this concept I'm voicing. I just don't know it.
It's like, I know that, the Korean War, no one, well, except if you're in Korea, obviously, but, people don't really talk about that much either, and it's not really taught. I'm not even really sure how we got involved in it. I just know that the show MASH was about the Korean War, and it resulted in there being a North and South Korea. And Vietnam, we know a bit about, but no one talks about it because of how controversial it was, but I think that it's the Vietnam War that really led to that idea of, even if you disagree with the war, still don't give the soldiers shit because they really had no say in the matter.
Vietnam's interesting. It's always portrayed as America's by themselves war, but the Australians were involved in that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Australians fought in World War in Vietnam, and
on our side or the other side?
Well, with the Americans.
I don't know. I don't know what they're up to over in Australia.
The UK was asked to take part, and
with their golden gay ice cream. I don't know what they're doing.
Golden Gay time. But the British were also asked to take part in Vietnam, and sensibly our Prime Minister said, no, you're idiots.
Well, you guys had enough to worry about. You were still rationing. Or no, that was the 50s.
Yeah, rationing ended in the 50s.
Yeah, but you still weren't having a good time either, so.
No, we just had a sane Prime Minister, unlike from 1997 onwards, who was the guy who was like, you wanna attack Iraq? Excellent, we'll go in for that.
Surely, we're friends. I'm right chuffed about it.
Tony Blair, oh god. Tony Blair, he's amazing.
Did I use chuffed correctly?
Chuffed meaning happy.
Yes.
Tony Blair is amazing because he did so many things that were okay/good in his time as Prime Minister. So many of them. But he so enthusiastically leapt into the Iraq War. That's what he's going to be remembered for. He's going to be remembered as...
He's a Tory, isn't he?
No, he's a Labour guy. He's a Labour in name only. He's quite right-wing. But it's as though he had a Prime Minister who wasn't doing a terrible job. He had, 3 terms. He was doing okay. He did a lot of good. He did a lot of moderate. He did some bad. But then suddenly did something... And he would have gone down in history quite well regarded. And then suddenly Iraq. And then it's as though he invented a whole new type of cancer and injected it into 1 in 5 people on the planet. That's how bad his reputation got.
Wow. Has anyone ever asked him, after the fact, what were you thinking?
Well, he has been asked, and he said that God will be his judge, and that he believed God wanted him to do it.
That's translation for no comment.
At the time, the UK media was all pretty much, okay, what the fuck is he doing? He must be, maybe he's trying to moderate Bush or whatever, but learn about it, it looks like Blair was just as much a Christian crazy person as George W. Bush was. Although Blair, he converted to Catholicism just after he left being Prime Minister.
So it's really convenient that God's telling him after the fact.
Yeah, Blair is absolutely certain of his righteousness, and it's terrifying.
Well, speaking of history, not ancient history anymore. Some history was pretty much made this week. Well, last week, really. Because we got 2 more states that we can now be considered married in. Oregon and Pennsylvania. My home state, which makes me very happy.
So you're half married now. Because I'm not there.
Well, I'm technically married. I'm just... You're somewhere else.
I'm somewhere where we're not married.
Or civil partnered.
Yeah, because Northern Ireland will only get marriage if it's forced on them somehow, or if they get embarrassed.
I think the EU should slap down the UK and be like, make Northern Ireland do it or you're out of the EU. Although England will probably be like, hooray, we've been waiting for an excuse for years.
They can't do that. England cannot force marriage on Northern Ireland. It's the way that our marriage laws work.
I really don't have a very good idea about how the EU works, so if there's ever a problem, just let the EU sort it. They'll do something.
Well, there is lawsuits going through Northern Ireland courts right now to force Northern Ireland to do marriage, and I think that's the most likely way that it'll go.
Probably. Alright, but enough of Richard Nixon as handsome and...
I'm sure Gerald Ford said the same thing whenever he was becoming president.
He did. Let's have enough of Nixon. I'm Gerald Ford. My forehead is huge.
I am the only president who didn't have to get elected at all. I wasn't even elected vice president.
This is great. I was just standing around. I'm president.
I'm not entirely sure what happened, but it happened.
Fear Gerald Ford, right, show. But, although, and I think he's deceased, so...
He is.
So
the only still living American presidents are Bush Sr., Clinton, Carter, Obama, and Bush Jr.
I like Carter.
And of course Hillary Clinton as well.
Because he's like, I'm not president anymore. I'm gonna go devote my life to good things. I'll see y'all later.
Yeah, Carter is in living memory, the only decent person to be American president.
Remember that time I thought I was attacked by a rabbit in the swimming pool? That was great. Plus, it was his grandson who busted Romney's, who helped the guy that busted Romney's 47% speech, who had the video, who helped him get that out because he was pissed off because Romney said bad shit about Jimmy Carter.
Carter, he got voted in accidentally. It's like, hey, I'm rich and I'm a decent human being. I'm gonna try and become a politician, and he somehow made it really far. And then, obviously, then they're like, yeah, we can get rid of this guy because he actually attempts to do nice things and tries to make the world a better place. I'm not saying he did it very well, but he tried.
Yeah, but they have to give people credit for trying. But so here's a question that I have for you. So the concept of like a gateway drug, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if there was someone that if you were a geek dealer, and you were trying to sucker some young mind into a world of geekdom, and so I was thinking about this, what would be like the gateway drug of that? But then I was like, that's too broad of a question because are you a comic book nerd, a D&D nerd, a video game nerd? So you're really into comic books.
I could actually answer that for a person. If I had to choose one person to be a gateway person to geekdom, I would either go with Joss Whedon or Kevin Smith.
Okay.
Because both of them work in film, television. Well, Smith was
you mean
in
like
and comics.
Like follow the works of them is what you mean.
Yeah, one person. Then through Joss Whedon, you'd get exposed to television, movie, and comic book geekery.
I would say Will Wheaton because he's like the king of geeks now on Twitter.
Yeah, but he doesn't do very much in it. He's more of a commentator on it.
He aggregates people's stuff.
Yeah.
But, alright, so if I was to say to you, what would be the gateway drug for Marvel and for DC? What would you say?
Well, depending on whether you meant an actual comic or a graphic novel, if it was a comic, an ongoing thing for DC, I'd suggest either Batman or Superman. For Marvel, probably either X-Men or Spider-Man. For graphic novels, for DC, Watchmen or Dark Knight Returns or All-Star Superman or Batman Year One. And in Marvel... See, Marvel's harder. Because Marvel is almost like, it's got several sub-universes almost. You've got the Ultimate Universe, which is a separate thing, but then you've also got like X-Men almost has its own sort of continuity, and then you got like the Avengers, the rest of the Marvel Universe is together, so it's a bit harder. It just came out. Days of Future Past is a very good comic series, although it's only 2 issues, but it was very, very well done. It was like the Terminator, but came first.
Dun, dun, dun.
Plus they killed Wolverine, and I was like, yay, I really wish that happened in the movie!
Now, I was thinking about this, and I was like, well, for video games, what would I say? But then I realized the problem is that, I mean, everyone from my generation is going to think about their first Atari, or their NES system, or their Sega Genesis, or something like that. But you really can't say, oh, well, you should go play this one really old game, you know, that I used to play in 1984 to a kid from now. But, assuming that you have an endless amount of emulators, so getting the games or playing them would not be a problem with modern technology, I would have to say that the video game gateway drug would be Mario in all of his iterations. Because he's pretty much done it all over several different consoles. And I was thinking about, like, Pac-Man, but, I mean, Pac-Man does have the addictive quality of Tetris, but they're puzzle games that you just want to play the same game over and over again. With Mario, like, you could move on to other platformers. With Mario Kart, you could move on to other racing games, etc., etc. You're making the face, I can tell.
That's a that's a fair choice. I'm not really sure that you could really have one gateway to video games. It's just, you get stuff and it might be good, might be bad, but it leads to other things. The idea of a gateway, to me, is ridiculous in itself.
Well, it's like the idea of, if you smoke pot, then you'll be like, oh, well, since I love pot, maybe I'll try all of the other wonders that drugs have to offer. Like, if you're looking at someone who has tried something once, and they're like, wow, this is really great, I want to know more about drugs, but here drugs is video games.
My main problem with the gateway drug even concept is there's a gateway drug to marijuana, and it's called cigarettes.
I wouldn't. Because so many people that smoke, it's not like every person that smokes then goes on to smoke pot. There's a lot more smokers in the world than there are pot smokers.
I know, but how many people use marijuana who never ever smoked a cigarette?
I would think maybe a lot of people, honey.
Interesting. Well, I would say it's okay. Well, I'd say it's far more likely to go from tobacco to marijuana than it is to go from marijuana to, say, angel dust.
Well, it's a flawed concept, but we're pretending that you found the perfect person who's tried something once and they want to know everything. Because otherwise you're kind of torpedoing my whole topic of conversation. And if you do that anymore, then I'm going to leave you alone and you're going to have to talk for yourself.
I do that all the time.
I'm like, let's talk about this. That sounds great. You're like, I think you suck, and also you smell, and you're wrong. And then I'm like, and now Quicksilver, everybody. But what she doesn't know is I have the final power because I'm the one that does all the damn editing.
This is true.
I could just be like, yeah, you embarrassed me, and we'll just edit that out. Right click, cut. No, it sounds really awesome.
There's a reason I sound like an idiot in these.
No, actually, you sound better. I clean up your...
You improve me. You're better for me than I am. Okay, well, if you're going to have one video game to be a gateway, I have to say that it would have to be Dragon Age, because that's all we ever talk about.
I would suggest that as a gateway into Western RPGs. Either that, or, even though I've never played it, but Elder Scrolls, because everyone has.
Plus,
in the world. Amen.
You've also got...
Except me, because in Skyrim I couldn't get past that goddamn frost troll, so I bravely ran away.
In Dragon Age, you've got, like, Haramont is basically like Jimmy Carter.
What?
Yeah, that was the...
You could tie that together, but it's not like... I doubt that at Bioware they were like, you know what this game needs more of? Dwarf Jimmy Carters. Get right on that.
Dwarf Jimmy Carter? You can either use Dwarf Jimmy Carter, or you can have Dwarf Nixon.
I don't think he was dwarf anybody. He was just... He had some good ideas, but the epilogue told you it went poorly. So there you go.
Epilogue goes poorly for everyone in every single possible ending.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it's one of those games where, oh, you saved the town, and you saved the child, and everything went well, and the epilogue was like, and everyone died anyway, you fucking asshole. And you're like, oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
I really hate, like, the moral choice games, where you do everything to be like the shining paragon of truth, and just everything goes to shit anyway. And what's the benefit of being good? Nothing. But, and now I was thinking about this because I'm on a forum, and one of the parts of the forum is on fantasy, and someone said, I want to start getting into Terry Pratchett's Discworld series. Where's a good place to start? And some folks were like, oh, start with this novel. I'm like, oh, no, but he was really at his prime in this novel. You should start there. And so I started thinking about it, like a gateway into fantasy. And I felt really bad for this because I know that pretty much everyone's going to disagree with me, but I would start with Tolkien. If you were bringing him into traditional high fantasy, And if you were thinking, and it can go different ways for different genres. If you're thinking like the absolutely crunchy, logical science space stuff, I would say either David Weber, who I've not read an incredible amount of, but he's written a lot of it, or Isaac Asimov, if you have more of a robotic bent.
Or,
if you're going
Blyton.
Or if you're going alternity, I would say Harry Turtledove. Really great for alternative history.
I just said Enid Blyton because I lost track of what you were talking about, and so threw a random name in there.
Hey!
Boris Yeltsin.
No, we're not talking about Boris Yeltsin. I would say George R.R. Martin, but I will be a bad geek and confess that I have never read his series. Because I have never had the time. I've said this before on the show, I think the definitive post-apocalyptic novel, if you want to get into it as a genre, would be Chemical for Leibowitz. And I encourage everyone to run right out to their local bookstore and buy that.
There's a bunch of different people you can do for books.
Well, yeah, the books are a little bit more diverse because you could go the genre and the whole. Like if you want to just read the classics of sci-fi like Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, Jose Philip Farmer, I always like his stuff. Don't read Orson Scott Card because he's a douchebag and a homophobe. So just saying.
How about this really fine space western called A Few Sunsets Too Many?
Ha ha ha! Very funny. Space western. It's hard to say because it was very popular as a genre way back in the day, like the Bat-Durston kind of days. And it became popular again with Firefly, but I really don't see too many new novels in the space western genre hitting the shelf. Like, I'm trying to think of something I could definitively say, this is representative of the space western genre, like, in print on the shelf, and I can't.
Yes.
You're out of your depth, aren't you?
I remember Brave Star, the cartoon in the 80s, which had, like, space western stuff.
Yeah, but that's not a book. That's not what we're talking about.
Space western.
No, well, now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to think of one. I'll put you on the spot.
Star Trek.
Okay, well, so what would you say you would be like a gateway into Star Trek? Which of the series? Because if you say the original series, someone would say, oh yeah, well it was the first one, that was the way you went, things and stuff. But then someone could say, yeah, but it might not, it has a lot of themes that might not resonate these days. And it was like, a little bit sexist and stuff like that.
Little bit.
Well,
For Star Trek, either Next Generation Season 4 to Season 6, that's when it was at its best, or DS9 Season 4 to 6 are its best. Those would be the best starting points, I suppose. Or possibly...
Enterprise?
No, Enterprise is better to be... It is better to put it into a space shuttle and fire it into the sun. With the exception of some episodes in Enterprise Season 4.
You know what really let me down about Enterprise? Because I watched the pilot. I was so excited when the first time they missed their phasers and figure out that they could recalibrate it just to stun somebody. And they didn't say set phasers on stun. That was a perfect point! Why didn't you do it? Oh, I turned it right off after that. I was like, alright, I'm done.
Or they could start with the Star Trek universe in one of, possibly Star Trek Online actually, or one of the good Star Trek films. And the last good Star Trek film we had was First Contact, even that wasn't terribly brilliant.
I liked Undiscovered Country.
That was 6, that was a good one. Yeah, the good Star Trek films to my mind are 2, one has its moments, but 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8. The idea of the odd-numbered, even-numbered Star Trek films is ridiculous.
Let's see, how about... I want to say Geek TV, because that's pretty wide. But if I was going to recommend some geek shows, and this is going to be incredibly dated because I don't really watch TV anymore, definitely X-Files. At least the first 1 to 3 seasons. And after that, it got a bit cattywampus.
It's geeky. It's one of the things that's too big to come up with some sort of a gateway thing to it. Really, each person's different. Then they have like different ways into it if they like it. It's one you really can't really quantify.
Well, it's just the fact that right now everyone's saying like, oh, well, geek is so chic and all this kind of stuff, and everybody watches Game of Thrones and blah 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 blah. But I'm talking about like the people who say, yeah, but I was watching XYZ show back in the day. If someone said, okay, well, I don't usually like geek stuff, but I really loved Game of Thrones. I want to read books like that, or I want to play video games. You agreed to this topic of conversation before we started talking about it. You never said you were going to sabotage the entire thing.
I'm not sabotaging anything.
Yes, you are.
Okay, a geek thing to do that everyone should watch. Star Trek. No, we already did that. Doctor Who.
Oh, well, okay, Miss the Doctor. Then if somebody said, I want to get into Classic Who, what would you say? What would be the gateway episode or Doctor or season?
I would say ignore my terrible vocal performance and watch my quick guide to Doctor Who, and then watch any stories that you think sound interesting. That's the point of me doing the show. I want people who have seen new Who to be able to have some way to look at old Who quickly as an overview, so they can use it as a way to get into the show if they so want.
That's cool.
So, smart answer.
Yeah, not exactly. But we're coming up on the half, so we bring you the magnificent works of Quicksilver, like he does.
Quicksilver!
Thought you could have been the one, but all you wanted was to have a bit of fun. I call you up, you make me come. Look what you've done. Come out into the night. Kiss me in the light. Hold me close and hold me tight. In your arms tonight. My back misses your sweet, sweet kisses. My tongue, the taste of you. The taste of you. Now I'm left singing our song alone by the telephone, waiting for your call, feeling myself fall for you. I wanna lay down by your side and watch the sunrise in your eyes. I never wanna let you go, but I know I'm driving you away. What did I do wrong? Did I hold your hand too long, so long? So long. The summer sun has shone and gone. The wind weaves weary through the day. When I ask you, will you stay? You just turn and walk away. What they said in all those books I've never read. What you told me all along. I'm better off alone. Now you're gone.
And hello, we are back, and I have been thoroughly disciplined. You've got to do that one, listening to Quicksilver. It just adds something to the performance.
So, now it's time for his favorite part of the show, and apparently his 3 fans on Twitter. It's time for Giovanni's Trivia Facts. And the crowd goes, Giovanni, are you with us today?
Yeah, boss, here I am. It's kind of hot, I gotta say, outside of winter today. Don't like the summer very much.
Nah, you're gonna be turning red.
I'm already red. This is like, this comes up like every 3 shows. You're like, are you red because you got boiled? I'm like, no, I'm red because I'm a lobster, asshole. And you're like, oh, because I'm gonna make a joke about melted butter and then I win, is how that works. I made you cry. Lobster supremacy. So anyway, you two lovebirds, I thought we'd have a wedding cake-based trivia fact today. And how often... Stop it. And how often can you say that, really? Now, did you know the oldest cake still in existence belongs to Queen Victoria? It's true. 2 slices of her wedding cake from 1840 still exist. Why were they saved? I have no idea. Maybe it's a British thing. If you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Just saying. Anyway, folks, I'll see y'all next week. And I'll leave you the capable hands of these 2.
That was very immature of you.
I was terribly upset.
If Giovanni doesn't snap you with his claws, I'm going to snap you for constantly screwing and unscrewing the top of your bottle. You do that every episode.
Well, it could be worse. I could, crack open, beers and stuff and crush them against my head and have the cats be going all like, "Ah, bitch, give me beer."
That'd be pretty awesome, actually. I think you should do that next time.
I would have to get beer and I would have to teach the cats how to talk. Oh, God, I'm going to have to find my copy of Spoken Cat again.
Psh. Well, anyway, it's time for the other feature, if you don't count the others. One Time at the Store. And if you're just listening to Lesbian Talk for the first time, if you've never heard our show before, I've been working for a large chain bookstore for about 10 years now, and I have seen and done it all in the awesome, the awful, and the pretty ludicrous, and this story is one of those times. Now, this actually happened several years ago, but it's related to what happened the other day. So every so often, when we have story time, the company will send us a large mascot costume. Like sometimes it's Clifford, if we're doing a Clifford story time, and this time it was Madeline. And so the manager said to me, "Will you do it?" And I said, "Yeah, fine, I'll do it." Because usually that means 10 minutes to get ready, and then you go out and do the costume thing, and 15 minutes to cool down, and that's nearly an hour of time you didn't have to work. So I get this whole thing put on. And the problem with the Madeline costume was that it had these big feet, and then it had these really nasty-looking, leotard things that were supposed to be her bare legs, because she wears a skirt. And ain't nobody in the store was fitting into those. So fortunately, I was wearing black trousers, and they said, "Well, that's just close enough." So we got me into this Madeline cloak and jacket things, and unfortunately, Madeline was a bit short and chubby and a double D, and they got the head, on my shoulders. And we go out, and of course, at least 3 kids immediately burst into tears, and one little girl comes up to me, "I love your hair, Madeline. Well, things and stuff. How did you come to our store, Madeline? Why can't you talk?" And you're not supposed to talk when you're wearing a mascot costume because it breaks the 4th wall. So I just had to be like, "Oh, it's hee, oh my goodness, oh." But so this experience brought to mind something that happened to me a few years ago when I was supposed to be the character Froggy. I think Landon is the last name of the author. And, Froggy's a young frog, it has a life and stuff like that. But the costume had the head pod, and then it had a huge body pod. So it was kind of like I was wearing a big bowling ball. And It was. I stick out the bottom. My hands are here. And so Froggy had these green leggings, which thank God weren't as tight as the leotard that came with Madeline costume. So that I had to put on so my legs looked like Froggy's, legs. And then there were a pair of gym shorts that went and they velcroed to the body pod. Alright, so whatever. So the kid's lead is a friend of mine, and she's on the stage doing story time, and I'm emoting, "Oh my gosh, my adventures, it's me, Froggy." And all of a sudden I hear everybody burst out laughing. And the kid's lead goes, "Froggy, hide your shame!" Because what had happened was his trousers fell down. The gym shorts, just the Velcro came, they fell down in front of everybody. So I was like, "Oh no," and quickly put my hands over my non-existent Froggy mascot genitals. And yeah, while Liz, the kid lead, is frantically trying to keep reading with one hand and scoot over and try to stitch up the pants and get them Velcroed with the other. And so for the entire rest of the day, whenever someone needed something from me, the guy back in music called me. He's like, "Yeah, you need to come break me for my 15. You can keep your pants on this time." It's like, "Shut up." So yes, I exposed myself and all my Froggy goodness to a bunch of parents and children one Saturday morning.
Okay.
It did.
I got nothing.
Yeah, most people have nothing right down there. They're like, so that happened, but anyway, things and stuff.
You know, I just wear silly costumes and expose myself on the internet show.
Hide your shame?
I have no shame.
Pretty much.
The side effect of being beaten down constantly every single day by a horrible, horrible, indifferent world full of evil, evil people. Burn!
Okay, so we were going to talk about Doctor Who, right?
Yeah, yes, we are. Doctor Who's.
So what episode did we watch?
The last one we watched was Carnival of Monsters, and someone has asked that we announce what we're going to do next time, so people can watch it. So hopefully the next episode will be a Tom Baker one, and it will be the Sunmakers.
We're going to try.
Yes, so check out the Sunmakers if you want to discuss it with us, but where we can't actually hear you.
Just shout it at the screen. No one cares. Go ahead.
Yes. But, we watched Carnival of Monsters. Even though I did a quick guide to Doctor Who not recently, I haven't actually seen a Carnival of Monsters in years.
So I was like, I watched it on Netflix the other night. You should too.
Yeah, I originally thought...
Yeah, this Carnival of Monsters is available on... It's one of the ones on Netflix, so do check it.
Plus, I think your mother has a copy of it.
It's possible. It's one of the ones that we gave her, but I can't remember.
But, originally I had planned for it to be like Spearhead from Space or something.
And I cheated.
Yep, you're just like, we're going to do Carnival of Monsters, and I was like, that's fine, that's a 4-parter. I was, racking my brains trying to think of a 4-parter we could do, because I didn't want to make you watch a 6-parter. Although now I'm thinking about it, the Sunmakers might be a 6-parter.
I'll deal.
No, it's not, I don't think so. But yeah, Carnival of Monsters features the Doctor and his lovely assistant, TARDIS, getting trapped inside a machine that makes them all small.
Joe Grant.
TARDIS is his assistant.
Yeah, but Joe is with him.
And they get trapped inside this machine that's all like makes them all tiny and stuff, and they're on a boat, and people lose their minds, and then like Harry Sullivan's there for some reason, but then he's not Harry Sullivan, and then these like grey aliens who are all very neutral, and then there is like this idiot in a silly costume, and there's a Drashig, which is terrible looking, but turned up in Alan Quarterman in the Lost City of Gold, and then they grow big again, and then they run around, and then that's the end.
You're doing it wrong.
Am I not explaining it? That's what my quick guide to Carnival of Monsters should have been.
Well, pretty much, so the first half of Carnival of Monsters is an incredibly boring immigration story on some alien world, where there are these triumvirate of gray-faced aliens that they have some kind of power, but they don't have ultimate power, but they kind of do. Stopping two folks who are Carney folks at immigration to their planet and basically being like, what the fuck do you think you're doing? And they're like, we have magic and tricks and technology. And they're like, well. So they're having their own little Nicenian power struggle because one of them wants to overthrow the president and he wants to use these guys for it to happen, and it's actually really kind of boring. And it's interspersed with the Doctor and Joe appearing on, the TARDIS appears on this steamer that they're pretty sure is from the 20s, and it's a British ship that disappeared in the Indian Ocean like a day out from Bombay. And they're like, oh no, it's a day out from when they disappeared, we're gonna die. But there's, for some reason, a sea creature. And they're like, oh, there's a sea monster, and maybe that's how it... And then they get captured. And then the TARDIS is taken away by a huge hand, and they're like, whoa. And then they notice that all the British people with them are just repeating the exact same 2 hours of their lives. The Doctor's like, I know why this is. And Joe's like, why? So eventually they break into the rest of this machine, which has somehow shrunken everybody down, and they're kind of like being kept for the pleasure of watching what happens.
Well, they're being used for... The machine sort of uses TARDIS-esque technology by shrinking you, because in a TARDIS, the concept of size is different inside a TARDIS. So that's what they're using. It's sort of related to Time Lord technology.
And the Doctor mentions that this is a kind of machine that he personally helped get outlawed. The Time Lords were like, no one should have these machines because they're bad, and you suck, and we're Time Lords.
And they seem to be pretty boring. It's like it's like a zoo that you bring with you, which I imagine that was what Robert Holmes was probably going for. But it's like you got this little zoo, and you gotta like look at it in a screen, so it's like it's no different functionally than looking at a video feed or a webcam.
Yeah. And so he's got a few quote-unquote channels. There's the humans, which he calls Solarians for reasons unknown. And then there's a violent race that are a slave race of the Daleks, which they're mentioned once, and that's the end of it. And then there are the Drashig, which are these huge sea monstery kind of things.
The slave race of the Daleks, that's the Ogrins, who are very, very, very unlikely to turn up in the new show because they're giant gorilla aliens and they were portrayed as dark brown-skinned.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so they're actually mentioned, but that's the end of it. And so the immigration people go back and forth between wanting the Carney to destroy the machine, wanting to try to destroy any contaminants inside the machine, if they're going to deport him or not, will his deportation be at his own expense, etc., etc. While the Doctor and Joe are trying to escape, and for a while the Doctor does escape, and then he goes back in to save Joe, and then one of the aliens rigs the machine so that the Drashig will get out and then take over their planet so they can have the military coup that he's always dreamed of. But don't worry, everything's fine in the end.
Yeah, they escape, and then the Doctor grows big, and they go small again, and you have to go back in there to rescue Joe. You get trapped in mud, and then the guy has to try and pick up a Drashig. But then, oh no, the Drashigs might escape the machine and grow into full size and, destroy the entire planet or something.
Well, one does. Or no, a few do, but then they get shot by a laser.
Yeah.
So there you go. And the costumes are so hilarious. They're very bad.
Which ones?
The ones that the Carnies are wearing.
Oh yeah, but that was deliberate. They were going for 1970s spacey Carney. So they were going to look terrible.
And they speak secret space gay language.
And whenever I for some reason had the memory that the Doctor spoke Polari, which is what the guy speaks. The alien speaks. It's an actual British Carney language, which was picked up in the years before homosexuality was legalized. It was picked up by the gay community in the UK, and it's also a language of theatre. So it was the secret language, basically, of the queers. And I thought it was really apt that I thought the Doctor spoke Polari, and I was like, that's genius, that's brilliant. Then I watched it again, it's like the Doctor doesn't speak Polari. I'm like, I am so disappointed. If any Doctor should be able to speak the Carney theatre gay language, it should be John Pertwee.
Well, maybe he could, but he was just faking that he couldn't. So
maybe, though. If I do get in charge of Doctor Who, I'm totally going to have him speak Polari.
I can't stop you. But yeah, I mean, it was good. It was, kind of boring. Oh, okay, boring's not a fair word. It was just kind of, there were times of no action.
Well, that's just the way that the TV was made at the time.
Yeah, but other classic Who stories haven't been like this, where it's like, will they or won't they be deported? Find out on the next episode of Doctor Who. Yes.
I like Carnival of Monsters. Alan Stevens, from CalderCity.com, I think it's .com, he came up with the theory that Carnival of Monsters is supposed to be a microcosm of the show itself.
How so?
You have the visitation device, you have the little device which shows you all these, adventures and stuff and these crazy different locations and all, and everyone's shrunk inside it. And you have the guy who's showing you this, or, taking you on these adventures is this guy who's camp and flamboyant, and he's in a ridiculous costume, and he's got a beautiful assistant. So the theory is that in some sort of meta level, Robert Holmes was talking about the show itself. Plus there's the Drashigs, which the guys who made the show have admitted is an anagram of dish rag because they were parodying the terrible special effect.
Well, there you go.
So it's possible, and I like that theory. I think it's amusing.
It was also a very pro-woman episode, because Jo Grant isn't too helpful, and she even gets a few lines over on the Doctor. And the female assistant to the Carney, she was kind of cool too. Yeah,
but that's probably a mixture of of classic Who, the companion being a useless object there to scream. It is a little bit of an unfair stereotype and a little bit of a myth. Different companions in different eras have been like that. Have been useless, but not always. And the show wasn't quite as sexist to the companions as a lot of people think it was.
Oh, okay.
I would even go so far as saying that the most sexist companion in the entire history of the show is probably male. Possibly Rose, but probably male. And if she'd been around in William Hartnell's TARDIS, Sarah Kingdon would have shot her in the head after half an episode.
Oh, she's the one that wanted the Doctor to get into physical fitness.
Yeah.
Right?
Bonnie Langford was cast as her because they loved her vocal range because she was professionally a singer. Oh. She was in Bugsy Malone.
Oh, who was she in Bugsy Malone?
She was the girl that was the lead actress in Bugsy Malone that Tallulah wanted the job. Not Tallulah. She had red hair and she would screech like Oscar. That one.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
cool.
That's Bunny Langford. But because she was professionally a singer, they cast her partly because she could pitch her scream at the end of the episode so that it mixed perfectly with the screech of the music.
Oh, that's so stupid.
I agree, and the character is absolutely terrible. She improved in Big Finish, but then again, almost everyone did.
Yeah.
But
there was that one Big Finish that it was one of the alternity ones that I really liked because it implies that she basically spent, because she had this science ring that the Time Lords gave her, basically spent the equivalent of several lifetimes trying to find the Doctor.
The Valiard, the one where she takes on the Valiard, which was a good one.
Yeah.
That was a good one. But yeah, Joe Grant being treated better than you expected. It might also be because Robert Holmes was generally better about that sort of thing than several other writers. But, because I think Carnival was Robert Holmes' script.
Robert Holmes, god of Doctor Who.
Robert Holmes, best writer in Doctor Who history. Robert Holmes also wrote The Space Pirates, which is fucking terrible.
Well, you can't win them all, really.
And he wrote The Talons of Wang Chiang, which was the horrifically racist one. But he also, he almost wrote for the Colin Baker era this story, which would have been set in Singapore. And the story was going to be called, and I quote, Yellow Fever and How to Cure It.
Oh no.
I got the feeling Holmes was a wonderful humanitarian in many ways, but I think he had a couple of blind spots.
That's terrible.
Yeah, but you can't really varnish over this sort of thing. It would do a disservice to the show to pretend this didn't exist or to hide it in some way.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it was back in the day where people were like, sexism, that doesn't exist. Honey, get me a beer and make me a sandwich.
Plus the
Oh wait, I'm sorry, it's the UK. You guys eat sandwiches.
Yeah, so.
Honey, get me a sherry and chips.
Honey, get me a sherry and George the Earl of Sandwich, the thing he created. We got to think of a name for it.
I'm gonna make you try a peanut butter jelly sandwich. It's like my mission in life now.
I have warned members of my family that you intend to make them try it, and you will bring some quote-unquote jelly with you for us to try.
I will. I'll bring Schmucker's grape jelly because it's the best. What did they say? They're like, oh no, quick, flee the country.
And they're like, well, I've tried that with regular stuff, and I was like, yeah, I said that too, but she was like, you got to try it apparently with grape jelly.
Grape jelly's the best.
And
I mean, strawberry's good, but it's grape,
Well, grape isn't one of our traditional flavors here.
That's why it's even better. It'll be exotic.
My mother came up with a possible reason for this, though.
Why?
Because grapes are one of those things that constantly need to be imported to the UK, so it never became one of our regular flavors.
That's a good point.
While, even though you need to import oranges and lemons and stuff, but with grapes, it's like,
Let's have a bramble bracken instead.
Brambles are fucking brilliant.
No, horrible. No
Blackberries.
I don't like blackberries.
I love them.
I mean, I know they're native, but I just don't like them. I don't like you guys with your strange fruits and vegetables and courgettes and aubergines and God only knows what. Marrows. What the hell is a marrow?
It's made of bone.
No. On that one show.
A marrow resembles a very large cucumber.
Okay, well, we don't have that. That's not even a thing.
Yeah, there's Americans being like, it doesn't exist, and, you insult the great British fruit, a pork pie with an egg inside it.
I'm not insulting it on a cultural basis. I'm saying that I don't want to eat it because I think that's horrible. Has nothing to do with me being American. It's just like, it's like, okay, this big, huge wad, actually, of congealed cold meat with an egg in it, wrapped up in pastry. And it's like greasy pastry, too. I'm like, oh, I can't even think about life. How could you do it? How could you do such a thing? It's just terrible. And you want me to eat ox tongue? That's not happening either. I'm telling you right now.
Oh, that was purely to horrify you.
I know people eat tongue in this country, but those people are not me. I want some tongue inside of me. I want the ox be licking me from the inside. It's not happening. What? It's not. I think it's disgusting. Like, my dad was like, oh, when I was a kid, we'd have a tongue sandwich. I'm like, that's horrible. Why would you admit such a thing in your life?
I like mushrooms.
Mushrooms are fungus, everyone knows that.
Yes, they are. Well, back to Carnival of Monsters.
But anyway, yes, besides what I will and won't eat.
The special effects are terrible, but that's on par for early 70s Doctor Who, or even early 80s Doctor Who, or even late 80s Doctor Who, or even Doctor Who in general.
No, the special effects now are pretty good, because they're all, CGI.
They're not all CGI. Actually, some of the guys who worked on model work in the classic show are working on the new show in models as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just like when they do a computer effect and it's like flashes or lightning or something. But yeah, it was an okay episode. 8 out of 10 would watch again.
It's not the best. It's not the best in that season. If you're the best in that season, season 10, I would suggest, very easy for that one, Green Death.
Oh, that's the one where they're down the mine.
Yeah, in Comedy Welshman, and they got the giant maggots and the giant flies.
Comedy Welshman.
Yeah, it was, 70s Doctor Who, so if you're not English, then you're automatically hilarious because you're not English. I
only know one Welsh person, and that's Welshie. So, take that as you will. If you're Welsh, write the show.
Yes,
Welsh about your Welsh experience. Be like, well, I go to school, and I have a job, and
so you
work in the mines? No.
The mines all closed, that's why we're destitute now. Why? You're so insensitive.
Why don't you work in the mines? Because I'm a computer programmer? Oh, fair enough. This is my imaginary interview of a Welsh person.
I gotta take you to Wales at some point. I like Wales.
I'd like to go there.
Although I have to say, out of all of the countries in the UK, it is probably my least favourite.
Why?
Well, it's not a case of being least. It's because they're all good. It's just it's not quite as good.
Well, what do you mean though? You can't just say that and not quantify it.
Well, okay. England is different from the other ones because it's very, very arrogant and has a bunch of little historical stuff. Northern Ireland is a lot like Scotland. They've got, virulent hatred between Catholics and Protestants. They've got lots of mountainy and hilly type things. They're very similar, but Scotland's better than Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, the most notable thing about it is explosions. And then Wales is just like, you're like Northern Ireland without the sectarian or the explosions.
Yeah, but they, totally fought the English for, a real long time and were independent and stuff.
Independent until the 12th century.
Yeah, but that's, still a real long time.
But it's just, I like Wales. I do. I like going to...
Plus they have a war against consonants.
This is true. But I like Wales. I've been to Wales several times. I quite like the North Wales, where you get Carnarvon, you've got Holyhead, you've got the place with the really fucking long name, and then down sort of south way you've got Swansea, you've got Cardiff, both really nice places. I've been to slate mines and all there. It's really, really cool. It's just not quite. I don't find it quite as interesting as Northern Ireland or Scotland or England.
You heard it here, folks. Hagen is racist. Racism.
My family is ancestrally Welsh.
Doesn't matter. Racism. Reverse racism. Triple let's racism. That's what I have to say. But yeah, so Carnival of Monsters. We're so good at staying on track, aren't we?
Well, we would be if dolphins.
Dolphins? Do you remember the 90s when, dolphins were on everything?
Do you remember the 90s whenever dolphins were in the Starship Enterprise?
I do, actually, unfortunately.
No, I'm not talking about Star Trek 4, I'm talking about Next Generation. One of the guys who wrote the technical manuals for the Next Generation, he actually put this idea in that because humans are so bad at navigating in 3 dimensions, therefore we need sections of the ship which are filled with water so we can put dolphins in there and watch them, and they can help us.
That'd be pretty cool.
So in 1 or 2 episodes they mention the dolphins in the ship, but they're never seen because everyone's like, that's fucking stupid.
Also, it'd be really expensive.
Yeah. They attempted to make Star Trek Next Generation like Sequest TSV.
I remember Sequest. I haven't thought about that in a long time.
I remember it too. It's one of those 90s shows I'm very slowly working my way through.
Well, I watched it when it happened, so...
What, live?
Well, no, when it aired. Not 12 years later or something.
Well, I watched it when it went as well.
No, you didn't. They don't have television in your land.
Do you know who played the dolphin?
A dolphin?
Yeah, but do you know the voice of the dolphin?
I have no idea who did the voice of the dolphin.
Frank Welker.
Well, slap my butt and call me Sally.
I would if I could.
Anyway.
Frank Welker,
I'll remember that for later.
He voiced most of the Decepticons and Transformers except
Frank
for
Welker
like
voiced
Starscream.
most of television.
This is true. He has like the longest cast credits list out of anyone ever. It's like all the Martians in Mars Attacks, both versions of Nibbler from Futurama, all the animals in pretty much anything, special spider vocal effects from these films. It's like you are a genius, Frank Welker.
He's a national treasure. I just keep, whenever you mention him, I keep thinking of Rap Critic in the Dr. Moreau review. I'm just surprised to know who Frank Welker is.
None of them knew who Frank Welker was, and I had to explain this entire joke.
I bet you did. Oh, dear. I remember. Which is not, back to my original point, which was about dolphins in the 90s. That was back when if something was like nature was involved in the title, it would sell like crazy cake. There was actually a store called The Nature Store, where you went to buy like rainforest CDs. There was like one in every mall, and they went bankrupt in the late 90s, but man, such a heady time when dolphins were on everything. I had so much jewelry with dolphins on, not because I even liked dolphins, because I actually really didn't, but it's just, you were a girl at that time, so all your jewelry had dolphins on it. Just, you know.
And there was like Echo the Dolphin and everything. I do recall the 90s it suddenly decided that environmentalism was awesome.
Especially if you could pay at least $20 for it at the mall.
Yeah.
Amen. So anyway, it's time for the dictionary.
I remember the 90s. That was a time when Michael Jackson helped a Willie get free.
Yes, he did. That's what he said. If you remember the 90s, write the show. So I have the Oxford American Dictionary in my hand. What page did I turn to? Pick a good one this time.
300.
All right.
This is Lesbian Talk.
It is. We speak for all lesbians everywhere. It's right in our disclaimer. 1 or 2?
2.
Out of 13.
Because this was the end of season 10, let's call it 9.
Okay. Well, HDQRS, an abbreviation for headquarters.
HDUS.
HDQRS. Headquarters.
Headquarters, okay. This is going to be certainly interesting, but we're definitely going to hopefully talk about the Sunmakers, and we're going to not stay on the topic.
2 above would have been H-bomb. That would have been fun. I mean, not like fun, but you know.
I fucking love H-bombs, dude. I like party with them all the time. You know, man, they get blitzed. It's amazing.
So anyway, I have been the Omega, and who have you been this week?
Andrew WK.
Well, let's party hard.
Like an H-bomb.